Hey, welcome back. Brighton Beach Memoirs. We are now in assignment 2. I will quickly say where we left off. If you will recall, Nora just came home, and that is Eugene's cousin. She's 16, and yikes, yes, Eugene has a crush on her. She came home with incredible news. She's in a Broadway play, she said, or she's been offered the job of a Broadway play, and she just went through it with her mom, who has no idea what she's talking about because she's never talked about something like this before because she's really not good at this stuff. In fact, Lori was just telling her, you can't sing, you can't even carry a tune. That's where we are. Let's pick it up on page 15, the 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth line. Nora says, well, I probably won't have to. They're just looking for dancers. Lori, on Broadway, you have to sing and act. Nora, how do you know? You never saw a Broadway show. Blanche, did you tell him how old you were? Nora, he didn't ask me. Blanche, he didn't ask if you were 16? Nora, he just asked me to audition. My God, isn't anybody excited? Eugene, I am. It's the most fantastic thing I've ever heard. Nora, thanks, Eugene. I'm glad somebody's excited. Eugene turns to the audience. Again, when he turns to the audience, he's doing an aside, which means only the audience can hear him. Yes, the other people are there standing next to him on stage, but they're pretending not to hear because we're only hearing Eugene's thoughts. And he says to the audience, my God, I'll be sleeping right next to a showgirl. Blanche, how can you go to Philadelphia? What about school? Nora, school? Mama, this is a Broadway show. This is what I want to do with my life. Algebra and English isn't going to help me on the stage. Lori, aren't. Nora, will you stay out of this? Blanche, you mean not finish school? Not get a diploma? Do you know how hard it is today for a girl to get a good job without a high school diploma? Nora, but I've got a job, and I'll be making more money than 10 girls with diplomas. Lori, you don't have it yet. You still have to audition. Nora, it's as good as mine. Mr. Beckman told me. Blanche, and what if you, God forbid, broke a leg or got heavy? How long do you think they'll keep you? Dancing is just for a few years. A diploma is forever. I know. I never had one. I know how hard it is to find a decent job. Aunt Kate knows. Tell her, Kate. It's very hard. Nora, then why did you send me to dancing school for 3 years? Why do I spend 2 hours a day on a subway, 4 days a week after school with money that you make going half blind over a broken sewing machine? Why, Mama? Blanche, because it's my pleasure, because I know how you love it, because you asked me. Nora, then I'm asking you something else, Mama. Let me do something for you now. I could be making almost $60 a week, maybe even more. In 2 years, when I get out of high school, I wouldn't make that much with a college diploma. Blanche takes a deep breath. I can't think now. It's almost dinner time. Uncle Jack will be home soon. We'll discuss it later. She gets up. All right, time out for a second. Remember, Blanche is Kate's sister, right? The reason why she's living there is because her husband, Dave, died a couple of years ago, I think 3 years ago, from cancer, right? And she's staying there because she has nowhere else to go. Remember, we found out in assignment number 1 that Blanche, or we were starting to get the idea that Blanche has an inability to really be a parent. And when I say that, I mean, you're a parent when you have a child, but just having the kid isn't just being a parent. You actually have to parent the child. One of the most important things you need to do as a parent is to tell your kid no, or to discipline them when they do something wrong. And trust me, no parent wants to do that. It's actually very hard to do. That's why Blanche can't do it. Guess who used to do the parenting in that regard, the disciplining? That would have been her husband, Dave. Now she's telling her daughter, we're going to let your uncle decide. Now, if you were a lot of you are 16-year-old girls, hello, would you want your uncle deciding something so important as whether or not you're going to have a job or go for an audition? Or would you want your mom deciding, you and your mom, just the two of you together? She's going to have a problem with that idea. Let's see what happens. Uncle Jack will be home soon. We'll discuss it later. She gets up. Nora, I have to know now, Mama. I have to call Mr. Beckman and let him know if I can go to the audition on Monday. At least let me audition. Let me find out first if they think I'm good enough. Please don't say no until Monday. I guess at this point, I would take her to the audition to see if it's on the up and up, right? To make sure she's safe, and to see how it all is. And then you'd have to deal with the whole idea of her being 16 and going away and leaving high school. Nah, you go back to that. It's still not a good idea, in my humble opinion. Of course, you're entitled to your own opinions. That's the genius of English class. Let's continue. Please don't say no until Monday. They all look at Blanche. She looks down at her hands. Eugene turns to the audience. It was a tense moment for everybody. I love tense moments, especially when I'm not the one they're all tense about. He turns back and looks at Blanche. Blanche, well, God knows we can use the money. We all owe Aunt Kate and Uncle Jack enough as it is. I think they have as much say in this as I do. How do you feel about it, Kate? Kate shrugs. Me? I never voted before in my life. Why should I start with my own family? I have to heat up the potatoes. She goes into the kitchen. So that was a way of Kate saying it's not my place, and she leaves. It's an interesting way that Kate does that. Blanche, then we'll leave it up to Uncle Jack. We'll let him make the decision. She starts for the kitchen. Nora, why, Mama? I love him, but he's not my father. Blanche, because I need help. Because I don't always know what the right thing to do is. Because I say so, that's why. She goes into the kitchen, leaving Lori and Eugene standing there staring at the forlorn Nora. Okay, so obviously we all know that when someone says, because I say so, rather than giving a good explanation, they oftentimes don't know, or they know it's not a good idea. So allowing Uncle, now, it's interesting because you can tell that she doesn't want her to do it. She just can't tell her no. The answer is no, and that's all she needs to be told, right? I mean, I think she's going to be angry if she was told no, but I think she's more angry now because she's not just saying it. She's having her uncle decide. Let's continue. Eugene M. Jerome of New York casts one vote for yes. Nora looks up at him, breaks into tears, and runs out of the room and up the stairs. Lori follows her up. He turns toward the audience. What I'm about to tell you is next so secret and private that I've left instructions for my memoirs not to be opened until 30 years after my death. I, Eugene M. Jerome, have committed a mortal sin by lusting after my cousin Nora. I can tell you all this now because I'll be dead when you're reading it. If I had my own choice between a tryout with the Yankees and actually seeing her bare breasts for 2.5 seconds, I would have some serious thinking to do. Kate comes out of the kitchen. I need bread. Eugene turns quickly. What? Kate, I don't have enough bread. Run across the street to Greenblatt's and get a fresh rye bread. Eugene, again? I went to the store this morning. Kate, so you'll go again this afternoon? Eugene, I'm always going to the store. When I grow up, that's all I'll be trained to do. Go to the store. Kate, you don't want to go? Never mind. I'll go. Eugene, don't do that. Don't make me feel guilty. I'll go. Kate, and get a 1/4 pound of butter. Eugene, I bought a 1/4 pound of butter this morning. Why don't you buy a 1/2 pound at a time? Kate, and suppose the house burned down this afternoon. Why do I need an extra 1/4 pound of butter? She goes back into the kitchen. Eugene turns to the audience. If my mother taught logic in high school, this would be some weird country. He runs out of the house to Greenblatt's. Our attention goes to the two girls upstairs in their room. Nora is crying. Lori sits on the twin bed opposite her, watching. Now, I just want to point out, remember, their room used to be one bedroom, right? That they put a wall down the middle of. And now two girls live, a 16-year-old and a 13-year-old, and basically young women live in this half a room together. So you can imagine, I picture like a prison cell, clearly without bars and all that, but the size, the beds have to be like right next to each other. So you can imagine, the reason why I point all this out is not just to remind you that they're poor, and that they're living in their uncle's house, and just to point out how nice it is that their uncle and family are allowing them to live there, and they're not just sticking them in the basement or something. They're actually split everything in half. They get to live in half. Watch this conversation that they can't get away from each other. It's interesting. Okay. Lori, so what are you going to do? Nora, I don't know. Leave me alone. Don't just sit there watching me. Lori, it's my room as much as yours. I don't have to leave if I don't want to. Do you have to stare at me? Can't I have privacy? I'm staring into space. I can't help it if your body interferes. There's a pause. I bet you're worried. How would you feel if your entire life depended on what your Uncle Jack decided? All right, is that melodramatic? Her entire life deciding on this? Possibly, but remember, this is a big decision, and she's 16. Oh, God, I wish Daddy were alive. Lori, he would have said no. He was really strict. Nora, not with me. I mean, he was strict, but he was fair. If he said no, he always gave you a good reason. He always talked things out. Now, it's exactly what I was referring to with the mom a little while ago. That's why she's so frustrated. Mom said, because I say so. It's an unacceptable reason to, or answer to ever give anybody in any reason. You have to tell them why. Okay, let's continue. Again, that's just my opinion. He always talked things out. I wish I could call him somewhere now and ask him what to do. 1 3-minute call to heaven is all I ask. Lori, ask Mom. She talks to him every night. Nora, who told you that? Lori, she did. Every night before she goes to bed, she puts his picture on her pillow and talks to him. Then she pulls the blanket halfway up the picture and goes to sleep. She does not. She does too. Last year when I had the big fever, I slept in bed with the both of them. In the middle of the night, my face fell on his picture and cut my nose. Okay, so is there anything, I'm just going to ask questions here. I'm not going to even give opinion. Is there anything wrong with a person, mourning their spouse? How about, I think they said it was 3.5 years later. It was either 3 years ago or 6 years. No, I think it was 6 years ago. And then 3 years later, they moved in. I could go back and look, and I will. I'll tell you in the next assignment. So it's either 3 years or 6 years. It's a long time. It seems as if she needs to move on, right? Because she has these 2 daughters who are looking for a mom, who are looking for somebody to make decisions and be the strong one, right? So let's continue. Let's see how this goes. She never told me that. That's weird. Lori, I can't remember him much anymore. I used to remember him real good, but now he disappears a little bit every day. Oh, God. He was so handsome, always dressed so dapper. His shoes always shined. I always thought he should have been a movie star, like Gary Cooper, only very short. Mostly I remember his pockets. His pockets? When I was 6 or 7, he always brought me home a little surprise, like a Hershey or a top. He'd tell me to go and get it in his coat pocket. So I'd run to the closet and put my hand in, and it felt as big as a tent. I wanted to crawl in there and go to sleep. There were all these terrific things in there, like juicy fruit gum or spearmint and lifesavers and bits of cellophane and crumbled pieces of tobacco and movie stubs and nickels and pennies and rubber bands and paper clips and his gray suede gloves that he wore in the wintertime. Lord, with the stitched lines down the fingers. I remember. Nora. Then I found his coat in Mom's closet, and I put my hand in the pocket, and everything was gone. It was emptied and dry cleaned, and it felt cold. And that's when I knew he was really dead. She thinks for a moment. Oh, God, I wish we had our own place to live. I hate being a boarder. Listen, I mean, think about that. That's very interesting. I've always, I most of the time think about it from the perspective of the people who are allowing you to stay in their house. I mean, again, they've split their house in half. The boys now, instead of sharing a big room, they now share a half a room, right? We're going to find out that they have a problem not eating, but they're not able to buy like the best of meals and roast beef and stuff like that. They have to eat cheaper meals. Dad has to work extra time. We're going to find out that Stan works as well and gives it all to the family. So think of the sacrifices that the people who are, the family part that are allowing them to stay in their house. It's huge. But now think about how they must feel. Blanche, the sister, and Nora and Lori, the daughters or the cousins to Eugene and Stan. How awful it would feel to be a guest and to feel like and to know that you're making them suffer. And these people don't put it in their faces, thank gosh. And you'll see they don't do that. They don't rub it in their faces ever, like I let you stay here. They just feel bad because they know what's going on. So that's also what's going on right here. So we're learning a little bit about Nora. Let's continue. Oh, God, I wish we had our own place to live. I hate being a boarder. Listen, let's make a pact. The first one who makes enough money promises not to spend any on herself, but saves it all to get a house for you and me and Mom. That means every penny we get from now on, we save for the house. We can't buy anything. No lipstick or magazines or nail polish or bubble gum. Nothing. Is it a pact? Lori, thanks. What about movies? Nora, movies too. Lori, starting when? Nora, starting today, starting right now. Lori, can we start Sunday? I wanted to see The Thin Man. Nora, who's in it? William Powell and Myrna Loy. Okay, starting Sunday. I'll go with you Saturday. They shake hands, sealing their pact. Then both lie down in their respective beds and stare up at the ceiling, contemplating their future home. Eugene returns with a paper bag containing the milk and butter under his arm. He stops, pretends to be a quarterback, awaiting the pass from center. The bread is his football. Eugene, Sid Luckman of Columbia, waits for the snap from center. The snow is coming down in a near blizzard. He gets it. He fades back. He passes. He acts all this out. And Luckman's got it. Luckman catches his own pass. He's on the 50, the 40, the 30, the 20. It's a touchdown. Columbia wins. They defeat the mighty Crimson of Harvard, 13-12. Listen to that crowd. Kate comes out of the kitchen. She yells out, Eugene, stop that yelling. I have a cake in the oven. All right. I want to point out the irony once again of she yells at him to stop yelling. She goes back into the kitchen. Stanley Jerome appears. First of all, I want to ask one question. If Lori, the girl who has the sickness, remember she has the flutter in her heart, which isn't really a sickness, but she totally takes advantage of and is spoiled because she gets spoiled. If she had yelled, would she had just gotten yelled at? The answer is no. Here comes Stan. We haven't met Stan yet. I think there's 2 characters we haven't met yet. Stan is one. He's the brother of Eugene. Let's find out all about him. And then we still haven't met the dad. We still have not met The dad. We'll find that out in a little while. Tonight. Maybe in the next assignment. We'll see. She goes back into the kitchen. Stanley Jerome appears. Stan is 18 and a half. He wears slacks, a shirt and tie, a zip-up jacket, and a cap. Stan, in a half whisper, hey, Eugene. Eugene. Hi, Stan. To the audience. My brother, Stan. He's okay. You'll like him. To Stan. What are you doing home so early? Remember, again, time out. English teacher moment. When he talks to the audience, it's called it's an aside, A-S-I-D-E. It's when they talk directly to the audience and there's a couple of people on stage. That's the opposite of the monologue, which is when the monologue is when you're talking to each other, right? And then, of course, there is the famous soliloquy, which is when there is nobody else on stage and you talk to the audience. Eugene will soliloquize once or twice in this. He'll be like alone in the shed or alone in his bedroom. And when he talks to the audience, that's a soliloquy. But right now, since he's with his brother, that makes it an aside. And when they're talking to each other, that's just dialogue, or you can call it monologue. Let's continue. Stan looks around, lowers his voice. Is Pop home yet? Eugene. No. Did you ask about the tickets? Stan, what tickets? Eugene, for the Yankee game. You said your boss knew this guy who could get passes. You didn't ask him? Me and my boss had other things to think about. He sits on the steps, his head down, almost in tears. I'm in trouble, Huge. I mean, really big trouble. Eugene, to the audience. This really shocked me. Now, remember, when they have asides, we're hearing their thoughts. So you know they're not lying because it's their thoughts. I mean, people do lie to each other or to themselves in their own head sometimes. Yeah, I'll do that homework. I'll write that paper. Now, people do lie to themselves. But when it's a play and there's an aside or soliloquy, no lies. We are finding out their true thoughts. Let's go to the audience. This really shocked me because Stan's the kind of guy who could talk himself out of any kind of trouble. To Stan. What kind of trouble? Stan, I got fired today. Eugene, shocked. Fired? You mean for good? Stan, you don't get fired temporarily. It's permanent. It's a lifetime firing. All right, time out. Wait, hold on. Let's say, Eugene, why? What happened? Let's stop right there for 1 minute. I want to point out, again, this isn't the Depression. It's 1937. But getting jobs in 1937, even after the Depression ended, this is 4 years later, still would have been quite difficult. They live in New York City. There's a lot of people in New York City. A lot of people are coming in at this time. I mean, this is 1937. So you still have all the people coming in off the boats. I don't know. Was Ellis Island closed by then? I don't know. My grandparents came in 1920, so I know it was still open then. I don't know when Ellis Island closed. But anyway, there's still a lot of people there, so the jobs are scarce. Also, remember, well, we don't know this. I think I told you. Stan's whole check goes to the family. Why? Because they have to pay for 2 families and a house and the food and the doctors and the clothes and everything. So him getting fired is huge. Yes, he's only 18 and a half. When you're 18 and a half, like if you got fired from your job when you're 18 and a half, is that such a big deal? Not really. I mean, unless it's like you work for your parents or something, then that's kind of a big deal. But in this situation, it's really bad. This is why he's like close to tears and why they're going to make such a ginormous deal about it. Also, I want to point out one more thing. The dad works 2 jobs, remember, like 12-hour days. So he's exhausted regularly and he's got all these problems to think about. So you don't want to add to those problems. Oh, wait a minute. I just forgot. Aunt Blanche, pardon me, is going to add to Uncle Jack's problems tonight, isn't she, right? Figure out my problem with my daughter because I don't want to do it myself. So he's going to have to deal with that. He's also not going to have to deal with the fact that his son got fired. We heard one thing about the father. Don't forget about Uncle Jack for the girls, their dad, Stan and Eugene's dad. He has high blood pressure too. So you don't want to agitate him, because it's dangerous. Gosh forbid he has a heart attack and he either dies or can't work. What are they going to do? Let's continue. Stan, it was on account of Andrew, the colored guy who sweeps up. Well, he was cleaning the floor in the stockroom and he lays his broom against the table to put some junk in the trash can, and the broom slips, knocks a can of linseed oil on the table and ruins 3 brand new hats right out of the box. All right, so let's understand this. The guy who sweeps up put down his hat and he knocks over some oil onto some hats and it ruins the hats, right? Let's find out. $9 Stetsons. It wasn't his fault. He didn't put the linseed oil there, right? Right? So Mr. Stroheim sees the oily hats and he gets crazy. He says to Andrew, the hats are going to have to come out of his salary. $27. So Andrew starts to cry. Now, I just want to point out, $27 seems like a little bit for us, but back then that would probably have been, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks of salary for this this worker guy, for the sweeper guy. It's huge. We're going to find out later, I think, in the play that Stanley makes like $17 a week. So think about that. It's like a week, almost 2 weeks of pay. That's insane to lose 2 weeks of your pay because of something you didn't even do. You didn't put the oil there, so you spilled it. So turns out we're finding out this boss is he's hard, right? He's tough. Let's find out why he got fired. He didn't knock it over. Let's hear more of the story. He cried. 42 years old. He's bawling all over the stockroom. I mean, the man hasn't got too much furniture upstairs anyway, but he's real sweet. He brings me coffee, always laughing, telling me jokes. I never understand them, but I laugh anyway. Makes him feel good, you know? Yeah. Anyway, I said to Mr. Stroheim, I didn't think that was fair. It wasn't Andrew's fault. Eugene, astounded. You said that to him? Sure, why not? So Mr. Stroheim says, you want to pay for the hats, Big Mouth? So I said, no, I don't want to pay for the hats. So he says, then mind your own business, Big Mouth. Eugene, holy mackerel. Stan. So Mr. Stroheim looks at me like machine gun bullets are coming out of his eyes. And then he calmly sends Andrew over to the factory to pick up 3 new hats, which is usually my job. So guess what Mr. Stroheim tells me to do? Eugene, what? Stan, he tells me to sweep up. He says, for this week, I'm the cleaning man. I can't believe it. Stan, everybody's watching me now, waiting to see what I'm going to do. Eugene nods in agreement. So let's see what happens here. Let's talk about it very quickly. So the guy accidentally spills the oil, which he didn't put there, ruins 3 hats. The boss tells him, you're going to have to pay for it. This guy, Eugene's brother, steps up for the guy and does the right thing and says, that's not fair. It's not his fault. And for doing that, the boss has now switched his job and made him the cleaning man. Now, I don't know if the cleaning man probably does get less money for the week. I don't know if he's going to lower his salary for the week. Probably not. I don't know. But it's, it's the indignancy of it all, right? It's making him suffer and look bad in front of all the other employees for just standing up for what was right. We're finding out again, this boss doesn't play, right? You don't mess with this guy, Mr. Stroheim. Let's find out more because, well, actually, we already know Stan's going to end up fired. So he hasn't finished yet. I think he's going to do more. Let's find out. And he shouldn't because Mr. Stroheim is tough, but let's go. Andrew stopped crying. All right, let's go again. Everybody's watching me now, waiting to see what I'm going to do. Eugene nods in agreement. Even Andrew stopped crying and watched. I felt the dignity of everyone who worked in that store was in my hands. So I grit my teeth and I pick up the broom and there's this big pile of dirt right in the middle of the floor. Yeah? And I sweep it all over Mr. Stroheim's shoes. Andrew had just finished shining them this morning. If you want to talk about ironing. Eugene, I'm dying. I'm actually dying. Stan, enjoying himself. You can see everyone in the place is about to bust a gut. Mrs. Mulcahy, the bookkeeper, can hardly keep her false teeth in her mouth. Andrew's eyes are hanging 5 inches out of their sockets. Eugene, this is the greatest story in the history of the world. Stan, so Mr. Stroheim grabs me and pulls me into his back office. Closes the door and pulls down the shades. He gives me this whole story, how he was brought up in Germany to respect his superiors, that if he ever, with an accent, did such a thing like you do, they would beat me in their cot until they carried me away dead. Eugene, that's perfect. You got him down perfect. And I said, yeah, but we're not in Germany, old buddy. You said that to him? No, to myself. I didn't want to go too far. I was wondering. Stan, anyway, he says he always liked me and always thought I was a good boy and that he was going to give me one more chance. He wants a letter of apology. And that if the letter of apology isn't on his desk by 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, I can consider myself fired. Ah, interesting. Time out one last time. So he's not technically fired, right? He has his job if he writes a letter of apology and he just hands it into the boss. But that's I don't know. Now you're talking about your pride, right? What's more important, your pride or your family? And I mean, sometimes you gotta just, especially with your boss, you gotta just, eat your pride. You gotta swallow your pride, as they say. Let's continue and see what he's going to do, though. I would have had a heart attack. What did you say? I said I was not going to apologize if Andrew still had to pay for the hats. He said that was between him and Andrew and that he expected the letter from me in the morning. I said goodnight, walked out of his office, got in my hat, and went home 10 minutes early. I'm sweating. I swear to God, I'm sweating all over. Stan, I don't know why I did it, but I got so mad. It just wasn't fair. I mean, if you give in when you're 18 and a half, you'll give in for the rest of your life, don't you think? Eugene, I suppose so. So it's the decision. Are you going to write the letter? Stan, thanks. No. Positively? Positively. Except I'll have to discuss it with Pop. I know we need the money, but he told me once you always have to do what you think is right in this world and stand up for your principles. And what if he says he thinks you're wrong? That you should write the letter. Stan, he won't. He's going to leave it up to me. I know it. Eugene, but what if he says, write the letter? Stan, well, that's something we won't know until after dinner, will we? He walks into the house. Eugene looks after him, turns to the audience. Okay, so now that Eugene is alone, I'm sorry, I can't stop myself from teaching again. Now that Eugene is alone, it becomes a soliloquy. Same thing, he's talking directly to the audience. It's just the difference. If you hear somebody is soliloquizing, it's a soliloquy, means they're alone on stage and they're just talking out to you as if you guys are friends. And aside, there's people up there, but they pretend like they all freeze while the person talks to the audience and gives them their thoughts. Really cool is when you have multiple characters on and they do multiple sides. Like they'll hear his thoughts and then you'll hear her thoughts and her thoughts and then his thoughts. It's cool stuff. Let's continue. Let's hear what Eugene is going to soliloquize about. It's going to be his thoughts. So sometimes you got to watch out for Eugene's thoughts. I'm just saying that now. You'll see. Eugene looks after him, then turns to the audience. All in all, it was shaping up to be one heck of a dinner. I'll say this, though. I always had this two-way thing about my brother. Either I worshiped the ground he walked on, or I hated him so much I wanted to kill him. I guess you know how I feel about him today. He walks into the house as Kate comes out of the kitchen carrying a water pitcher for the table. Stan has stopped to look at the small pile of mail. Kate to Eugene. All day it takes to bring home bread. Give Aunt Blanche the butter. She's waiting for it. Eugene, I was home a half hour ago. I was talking to Stan. He goes into the kitchen. Stan, hey, I got a letter from Rosalind Weiner. Remember her? She moved to Manhattan. They live up on Central Park West. Kate, why not? Her father's a gangster. Her mother's worse. I don't get a kiss hello? Stan, nope. I was going to save it up and give you a giant one for Christmas. We don't have Christmas. I'll take it now, thank you. Remember, they're Jewish, so they don't celebrate Christmas. They celebrate Hanukkah and Passover. We don't have Christmas. I'll take it now, thank you. He puts his arms around her and kisses her warmly, then embraces her. A hug, too? When do I ever get a hug from you? You must have done something wrong. See, moms are smart like that. He overdid it, giving her a hug and a kiss. He did do something wrong big time. The dude is almost fired, right? Yeah, let's continue. Stan, you're too smart for me, Mom. I robbed a barber shop today. Kate, is that why you look so tired? You don't get enough sleep running around all night with your 200 girlfriends. Stan, 130. That's all I have. 130. All right, let's stop. Remember, you're gonna answer all your questions for assignment number 2. Thank you very much. And let's think about what's shaping up to be one heck of a dinner, right? We're going to meet Jack, the father, and he's going to come in. Let's hope that Jack doesn't have any problems of his own, right? Because he's got 2 giant ones that he's coming home to. And you can kind of count the third one as the perverted Eugene. He's a problem, and the father doesn't even know it. But we're going to find out more Eugene in a while. In fact, I want to make a point now, and I'm going to make it in the beginning of every one in the future. From now on, Eugene is going to go into the land of wildness with his puberty and his crush on Nora. So no kids around, please. If you have little brothers and sisters, if you're listening to this at home, get them out of there, scurry them out of there. And if you have to be around them, then pop some earphones in, please. It's going to be too much for them. Thank you very much. Otherwise, thank you for enjoying assignment number 2 with me. Make sure you get those questions answered. If you have any questions, shoot me an email. Have a great day.